Welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow, 18-hour special initiative that celebrates the undying entrepreneurial spirit of micro, small and medium enterprises. On the show today, I'm in conversation with Umesh Malhotra. He's the co-founder and CEO at Hippocampus. Umesh, thank you so much for speaking with us today. Let's kick this conversation off by asking you to run us through the story behind Hippocampus.
I'll take a second or two to move to my past. I'm actually not an educationist. I'm an engineer. I went to an IIT. I spent 12, 13 years working in IT industries. I did my own startup. I actually got into education because somebody took me to a slum in Bangalore city. This was 12 years back, and I was really shocked by the quality of education we were offering to our children in the public school system. It was extremely disheartening, and I said, hey, is there something I can do to fix this problem? I have spent nearly 12, 13 years working globally, but this was really appalling, and I said, let me go and try to fix this problem. So through a series of efforts, initially through a not-for-profit foundation, but from 2011 through a for-profit company, the effort we have had is to see what we can do to change the education and the quality of education we provide for students in poor communities, students in rural India.
You are trying to solve a problem or a concern that exists as far as the education sector goes. You initially set up Hippocampus as a children's library in 2003. What prompted you to enter this space?
Okay. So my entry into the library was purely an accident. When I was working in California, I decided to leave Infosys and come back to India and do my own startup. My son, who was all of 4 years then, refused to come back to India. And on asking why, he said, there are no good libraries in India for kids. So we made a promise to our son saying, when we come back to India, we'll open a library. It took us a few years to fulfill that promise, and in 2003 we decided to start a library for children. It was purely keeping up a promise we made to our child. But what happened with that library, the library actually took off.
What advice would you have, Umesh, in terms of the opportunities that exist in the education sector right now for our viewers and for entrepreneurs who are looking to enter the education space?
Okay. I think it's enormous. Whether you're working with rich children or poor children, the opportunities are enormous. My advice to entrepreneurs is, don't try to solve the intermediary problem of teachers. I think try to look at the problem as the child and saying, what are you going to do to make child-centric learning? And look at that being the center of all the problems and then work outwards. Most people tend to get stuck into saying, how do I make a classroom better? How do I make teachers better? They don't look at from the bigger problem of saying, is a child who is learning, and think of making that experience better. So I think that's the way, so I think the market is ripe for disruption.
Okay, I want to broad base the question a little at this point. While you've given advice for entrepreneurs who are looking at the education space in general, what is the one piece of advice that you would have for your fellow entrepreneurs and viewers of this show?
So I think my advice to entrepreneurs is going to be that scaling a business is really hard. Doing an Excel sheet is very easy, but scaling a business is extremely difficult. As you grow and do your business, you need to constantly work on building your resilience to handle the challenges that come up with scaling your business. It would be in multiple dimensions, right? From handling customers, to handling employees, to handling investors. It would be in multiple dimensions, and I would therefore ask entrepreneurs to focus on building resilience, and that would be critical for their success.
You chose two of the toughest areas to really enter in as far as Hippocampus is concerned. One, you're in the preschool business, and two, you've looked only at rural India. I can only imagine that the challenges are really against you. Why have you looked at preschools, and why did you look at rural India?
completely. So I think on a personal basis, I believe preschools are extremely important for children. I went to a preschool 40 years back, and I find it very disturbing that today in rural India children don't go through preschool. So what kind of revolution have we gone through as a country if we haven't been able to provide something as basic as preschools to people in villages? So I personally believe in this. The second reason why I also went into villages was I think that people in villages lead very simple lives, have very simple expectations and aspirations, and I look at every business as an opportunity to serve a market that is not being served and do a good job serving and therefore build that market. And I think so it was a combination of social reasons and I think a business opportunity which led us to do this.
We were talking about the size of the education industry in India and the opportunities there. Let's narrow down a little bit, Umesh. Talk about what the opportunity is for preschools in India.
10% of children globally are 0 to 6 years old. And 60% of them, right, belong to poorer countries. So on a population of 6 billion, if you do the math, 360 million children in the world are 0 to 6 years and belong to low economic families. The opportunity for somebody like us is 360 million children globally, and maybe in India it could be 1/5 of that. So I would say 17 million children in India, and that is a huge opportunity because as people are getting more and more into doing education and starting to think about education for the children, and the biggest increase in income levels globally is happening at the bottommost. Forget the top 0.1% of the world, which is growing much faster and much richer. But the biggest increase in income levels around the world is happening at the bottom 50-60%. So these people are moving up the aspirational ladder and they want better services. So if you're sitting out here offering services to 60 million children in India, who today are willing to pay you $100 a year, which is possibly an Indian opportunity at the current size of $6 billion, I think that this $100 in the next decade might be worth $200 or $250. So it's actually talking about a business opportunity which is growing in terms of the number of what they are able to pay. So maybe it will be an opportunity of $12 to $15 billion just in preschool in India.
Let's flip this question around a little bit and talk about what the challenge is in your opinion now. What's the biggest challenge, Umesh, at this point?
The one biggest challenge in the education sector today is the mindset of parents. The mindset and fear in parents. Parents today believe that I learned in this system where I was expected to read and write, go for examination, pass examinations and become successful. So a lot of people who have got any element of success today because it's come from education, look back and said, that system worked for me reasonably okay and I'm doing okay for myself. And therefore they tend to very blindly push the same system for their children. And that mindset is a mindset of the past because the challenges their children will face is very different from the challenges they have faced. And the preparedness which the children need is very, very different. I think that is the biggest challenge, which is changing the mindset that kids have to learn different things and kids have to learn things differently. And as we start working significantly with rural communities, we notice this is a lot more entrenched because they say that's the way urban people are learning. And when you go out and say, hey, there is activity-based learning, concept-based learning, which is currently becoming the norm around the developed world, it takes a lot of time for people to understand and digest that.
The sector that you work in, which is essentially primary education, closely depends, I assume, on government policy. How has government policy really kept up with the kind of developments, the needs, the changes that are taking place in the education space? Has it kept up, Umesh?
You know, education globally, okay, and unfortunately, this is the problem globally. Education is always considered to be something, especially pre-primary and primary education is considered to be something which is the responsibility of the governments to deliver. And globally, and I would not single out India, right? This is a global problem. Whether it's UK, whether it is USA, the global problem is that governments want to run education. They think it is their responsibility, and if the people who are actually venturing into education, anybody who does this for profit is looked at with suspicion, especially if you are an operator of the institution. If you are a service provider, they don't mind, but if you are an operator of the institution, you do it for profit, it's looked at with suspicion. So I think this is going to be the case for the next maybe 5-10 years. There is a huge shift happening in the world. In the last 20 years, the number of children who have moved out of the government school system in the US into private schools is constantly increasing. People moving into charter school movements is constantly increasing. In India, the number of children who have moved into private schools has gone up from maybe 10%, 15, 16 years back to nearly 45% today. So that entire shift is happening. So I personally think that in the next 5 to 7 years, you will start seeing policy changes that allow for more active private sector participation in education. This is I think a battle which we have to continue fighting, and we have to continue advocating with the government, saying, hey, there are people who want to do education well and will do it without having the tag of for-profit, non-profit.
Would you classify Hippocampus as a social enterprise?
I believe so. That's what people have been telling me, that what I do is a social enterprise. So I think I fall into that basic construct of being a social enterprise. So I think so.
Okay, the reason I'm asking you this is I want you to explain to our viewers whether it's possible for a social enterprise like yourself to be making money.
Social enterprises are obviously a lot more difficult to deliver to than pure enterprises, right? Because pure enterprises have got a lot of things going for them. They can look at doing multiple. Social enterprises are built on a premise saying that we also want to make sure we do impact and earn some money. So it's obviously a lot more difficult to do. Is it doable? I think the answer is yes. I'm not. Is it difficult? Yes, the answer is yes, it is difficult. Many people call even a venture capital funded business a social enterprise, where you don't make profit, okay, and the venture capital funds your losses. So a social enterprise, I think, it will get there. I think in the next 5 to 7 years, they will become. I think we will set some goals and standards where people will say, hey, this was doable. So I think many of us currently are working in that entire space to say, what we are doing is doable, this will, and I think in the next 5-10 years you will see a lot of fantastic examples of social enterprises which will demonstrate profit and return.
Let's take a very quick break then on this episode of Leaders of Tomorrow, but don't go anywhere. We'll continue this conversation with Hippocampus. Welcome back. back. You're with us here on Leaders of Tomorrow, MSME Dialogues, and I'm in conversation with Hippocampus. I want to take a step back. I understand you used to be a senior executive at Infosys, so you essentially quit, the corporate world to set up a Hippocampus to become an entrepreneur. What has been the highlight of this entrepreneurial journey? Would you recommend it for others? I'm trying to understand if you think that, in hindsight, the entire move has really been worth it.
Okay, so I think so that there are a few questions here. One is corporate world to be an entrepreneur and corporate world to being a social entrepreneur. Okay, so two different things, and I have done both. I think corporate world to being an entrepreneur, definitely I would highly recommend for people who have a very strong need for learning and who have a very strong resilient framework in themselves. When I was just 30 years old, I raised venture capital the first time, and I did a company which we sold in 2002. And yes, the answer is, was it worth it? Yes, extremely good learning experience. I learned a lot in 2 years, which I never learned working for 9 years in at that time a small company called Infosys, but I was still doing a small role in a big, right? I grew with them, but so I learned in 2 years what I had not learned in 9 years working in the corporate world. I made more money in 2 years than what I made in 9 years. I got to understand myself and my strengths and weaknesses much better. I got to understand what it takes to build a business, the challenges. So I think it is an amazing thing to be an entrepreneur, and obviously you need to have resilience, because there will be moments when you are on the cliff and you have to know how to get up and avoid the cliff, find a new route and move on. As a social entrepreneur, I think the problems are significantly more complex. I would not recommend social entrepreneurship for anybody who believes that money is the final answer. A lot of people become entrepreneurs because they want to earn more money. Social entrepreneurship is not the answer for that. They should then be an entrepreneur, figure out how to make money on that, and then venture into it. I would not recommend social entrepreneurship for people who are not too sure what priority money gets in their life, and if they think money is a higher priority, then they should not get social entrepreneurship.
Give us a few more details on Hippocampus. How many preschools are you looking to set up before the year is out?
Yeah. So now, Hippocampus is very clear stated goal is what we call Mission Finland. With Mission Finland, what we want to achieve is that we want to be educating as many children in India as the country of Finland does in its entire country, right? The government of Finland does. And we want to do this with same outcomes at 1% of the cost. Now, why is that extremely important and critical? The reason why this is extremely important and critical to do Mission Finland is we believe if we are able to run an operation as big as a country, then we are able to show role models for other countries so that we can go and work and participate with them. Having said that, in terms of numbers, I think if you look at the next 5 years, we are hoping to be approximately 1,000 preschool centers in the next 5 years in this country. We are currently about 320. So we will have 1,000 preschool installations in the next 5 years, and we also will be running approximately in the next 5 years close to 50 schools. So we are at this point of time looking at expanding our footprint significantly into rural India, running preschools and schools.
Okay, let's talk fundraising. Where are you right now in your own fundraising journey? I noticed that you raised some funds end of last year. Just talk us through that.
So we raised money from the Asian Development Bank, Khosla Impact and United Seed Fund 2 years back. We raised money in July 2014. and we raised approximately close to 14.5 crore rupees then. So I think there are a class of investors in the world who understand social enterprises, and I personally think that if you're running a good social enterprise and running it efficiently, finding money is obviously always going to be a challenge because of various challenges, because the returns are very high, so amount of money available for social enterprise is very limited. But if you're running a decent business and if you continue doing well and you tell a good story, I personally believe that the number of people coming in and who want to invest social enterprises is constantly on the increase. So I personally feel that entrepreneurs will get an opportunity to pitch and raise money. There is money there globally. The story needs to be right and we have to tell it well.
So from that perspective, what's the advice you would have for our viewers in terms of how to go about raising funds in the education space?
If you are a young entrepreneur, the first time entrepreneur, raising the seed fund is always going to be the most difficult thing, and I think that's an exercise people should go through. Asking friends, asking family, convincing your parents, uncles, professors, businesses, whatever it takes to get that fund, it's an exercise you have to go through, 10, 20, 30 lakhs, because it does a couple of things. It certainly makes you accountable to somebody else because you have taken money. And you also start looking at how you're using your money very, very carefully and sharply. So my thing with any entrepreneur who's starting fresh, has not been an entrepreneur before, he needs to go out and raise the seed fund round through friends and family. It's extremely, extremely important. And use that seed fund to test out his business and demonstrate that there are customers who like this business. Without doing that, I don't think an entrepreneur should expect that on a business plan or an idea, somebody will come and write him a big check. That would be my advice for people, number one. Number two, entrepreneurs have to have the guts to say, this is going to be what I am doing full time. If they are going to be playing I'm going to do this part time till the business proves itself, then I don't think I will not give that entrepreneur money, because he has that conviction, his own idea to put his full time behind it. So I think that would be my initial very, very strong mentoring lessons for entrepreneurs who want to raise money. I also am an angel investor because I had my IT background, so I am also a very active angel investor. And this is what I also look for in many people who come for money. The second thing which I would say is, if an entrepreneur has gone through that, he needs to constantly look for customer validation of his idea. Is the customer buying and is the customer paying for it? Don't talk to me about free customers. Talk to me about customers who are paying for it, and are the customers coming back and repeating or giving references so that it indicates that your business is doing well.
All right, Umesh, thank you very much for speaking with us here on the Leaders of Tomorrow. With that, it's a wrap on this edition. Do remember, you can write to us at leadersoftomorrow@timesgroup.com, reach us on social media using the hashtag LOT, or call us on the number which is on your screen. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.